Every interrogation room ever built has a two-way mirror for a reason. Not to catch the moment someone confesses, but to watch what they do when they think nobody's looking. Because humans have been reading each other for a very long time. Long before polygraphs, long before voice stress analyzers, long before any machine that cost $100,000 and still gets it wrong about a third of the time. The ability to detect a lie is wired into us, and yet, most people are genuinely terrible at it. Not because the signals aren't there, because they're looking for the wrong ones. Here's the myth that's been quietly running the show. Liars avoid eye contact. You've heard it your entire life. Parents use it on their kids. HR managers use it in job interviews. Detectives in bad TV procedurals use it as the smoking gun. And it is almost completely useless as a standalone signal. Here's why. When someone is telling the truth but they're terrified of not being believed, they will hold eye contact so hard it becomes uncomfortable. Accused of something you didn't do, you stare. You overcompensate. You become so aware of your own eyes that you forget what normal looks like. Meanwhile, a confident, rehearsed liar, the kind who's done this before, holds eye contact just fine because they've learned that's what you expect. The myth protects exactly the people it's supposed to catch. And that's the problem with the single-tell approach in general. Every body language expert who sells you a list of 10 signs someone's lying is selling you something that doesn't work in isolation. There's no Pinocchio effect. No one signal, no matter how dramatic, tells you anything on its own. The nose doesn't actually grow. But here's the thing that changes everything, and it's the piece most people never get to. The real tell isn't a behavior. It's a deviation from a behavior. That distinction is what separates useful observation from educated guessing. And before I show you how that actually works in practice, you need to understand why the human brain makes lying physically expensive in the first place. Lying is cognitively brutal. That sounds dramatic, but think about what it actually requires in real time. You have to suppress the true version of events, which your brain already encoded and wants to retrieve automatically. You have to construct an alternative version that's internally consistent. You have to monitor your own performance to make sure it's convincing. You have to watch the other person's face for signs they're not buying it. And you have to do all four of those things simultaneously, in real time, while appearing relaxed. That is an enormous load, and the brain, under that kind of pressure, starts to leak. The leaks don't always look like what you'd expect. Sometimes it's a micro-expression, a flash of emotion across the face that lasts less than a fifth of a second before the person consciously suppresses it. Contempt, fear, disgust. These expressions are involuntary. They run on a different neural pathway than deliberate facial movement, which is why you can't train them away the way you can train yourself to hold eye contact. Paul Ekman spent decades cataloging these, and what made his work genuinely useful wasn't the expressions themselves. It was the concept that the face tells two stories at once. The one you're trying to tell, and the one you can't stop telling. But micro-expressions require training and usually video footage to catch reliably. So what do investigators actually use in the field? Language. Not body language, spoken language. The structure of how someone tells a story under pressure is extraordinarily revealing. Truthful accounts tend to be non-linear. People remember things out of order, contradict minor details, add information spontaneously, and include sensory specifics. What something smelled like, what they were thinking in that moment. Fabricated stories tend to run in chronological sequence, because that's how we construct narratives intentionally. They're also oddly clean, too clean. The details that are there for a reason, and the details that are missing for a reason. I still remember the first time I actually sat down and watched real investigative interview footage. Not TV, not a dramatization, actual recorded interviews. I thought I'd be watching for shifty eyes and sweating. Instead, what jumped out was how still some of the people lying were. Not nervous, almost weirdly calm. Because the nervous ones, they were usually the people telling the truth and panicking about not being believed. That moment reframed everything. So here's where the twist lands. The signal most investigators actually trust isn't any single physical behavior. It's the gap between someone's baseline and their behavior under specific pressure. Baseline is everything. Before you can read a deviation, you need to know what normal looks like for that specific person. Some people are fidgety, some people speak in fragments. Some people avoid eye contact because they're introverted, not because they're guilty. You cannot skip this step, and most people do, because they walk in looking for the lie before they've established what truth looks like for that individual. That's the mistake. Not reading the wrong signals. Reading signals against the wrong reference point. The right questions exploit exactly this. FBI and law enforcement interviewers don't just ask, "Where were you?" They ask open-ended questions, and then let silence do the work. Silence is pressure. Most people, and especially people managing a fabricated story, will fill silence automatically. They'll over-explain. They'll loop back to points they already made. They'll add qualifiers that weren't there before. Ask someone to tell the story backward. Not because lying in reverse is harder, but because the request itself is cognitively disruptive. And disruption is where the seams start to show. A person telling the truth reconstructs. A person reciting a script has to search for the line they didn't rehearse. Clusters are the real unit of analysis. One raised shoulder means nothing. One pause means nothing. One throat clear means nothing. But a raised shoulder, a pause, a throat clear, a shift to past tense when describing an event they're claiming is ongoing, and a sudden loss of spontaneous detail, that cluster, arriving together, in response to one specific question, means something. The signal is the pattern. Deception rarely announces itself with one dramatic tell. It shows up as a collection of small inconsistencies that compound. Imagine someone sitting across from you, and you're trying to figure out if they're being straight with you. You wouldn't start by watching their eyes. You'd start by asking something low stakes, something you already know the answer to, and watching how they answer it. You'd calibrate. Then you'd move into the territory that actually matters, and you'd notice where the rhythm changes, where the fluency drops, where a word gets swapped for a vaguer one, where the emotion doesn't quite match the content. You'd be tracking delta, not absolute behavior. Because that's the real insight buried under all of this. Deception detection isn't a talent, it's a methodology. The people who are genuinely good at it aren't good because they were born perceptive. They're good because they built a process, and they trust the process more than their gut. Your gut is running on cultural myths and confirmation bias. The process is running on behavioral science. And the difference between those two things, which signals you choose to trust and why, is where most conversations about reading people are still just getting started.